Good afternoon. In the next few minutes, I would like to talk about my PhD DEM, investigation of executive function in cerebral palsy, and about my progress of my researches. My name is Nóra Zimonyi. I'm a conductor and PhD student. I work at András Pető Practicing Primary School. My vision is that in the future, I would like to live in a world in which citizens with CP are a productive and integral part of society. I'm a conductor, therefore I would like to develop the skills of patients living with CP. I'm fully committed to a more targeted development program for people with CP that could improve their quality of life. I'm currently working on 2 projects in order to get to know the executive functions of people with cerebral palsy. You can see the first project title, which I will present below. Okay. Why is it important to examine the executive functions in this population? Children with cerebral palsy may have problems with movement, walking, difficulty speaking, learning difficulties, and cognitive impairment. But we don't know much about their executive functions. However, these are important for school and life success. Therefore, the aim is to examine the executive functions of the cerebral palsy in the cerebral palsy population. First of all, let me tell a few words about the executive functions. These are a set of mental skills that include working memory, inhibitory control, and cognitive flexibility. Working memory, which allows information and thoughts to be kept in our minds and manipulated with them. Inhibitory control, which includes self-control and inhibition of unwanted behavior and selective attention. Cognitive flexibility, which means that we can solve a problem in several ways. We are able to quickly switch between our mental sets and strategies. We use these skills every day to learn, work, and manage daily life. Trouble with executive functions can make it hard to focus, follow directions, and hand emotions. You can see our clinical question above, and we have 2 hypotheses. We compared the executive function test results between cerebral palsy and typically developing population. The selection is done. Finally, 14 articles have been selected. You can see the overall results of the executive functions. The articles use different tests, and these tests move on different scales. Therefore, we didn't use raw mean difference, but we used standardized mean difference. The results are on one side, and if you look at the heterogeneity, we see that it's a bit heterogeneous. The result shows that CP people have disadvantage of executive functions compared to the typically developing peers. We get significant results, and we also weaved the results on the components. Now we can see the results of one of the executive function components, namely working memory. Similarly to the overall functions, the results are on the left side, but the results of the articles are more homogeneous. If you look at the standardized mean difference, it shows us that the CP population has a disadvantage in this component, which is significant. If you look at the results of the inhibitory control, they are very similar to the ones as in the working memory. The results are on the left side, and the results are of the articles are heterogeneous. The standardized mean difference is also significant, which means the CP population also had a disadvantage in this component. Regarding cognitive flexibility, the results are a little bit different because the results of the articles are on the left side, but the articles are homogeneous. About the strengths and limitations, because we collected enough articles, we were also able to examine the components of the executive functions. There are more articles about the children than adults, and also limitation that the different tests measure the same aspects, so we performed the standardization. As we assume cerebral palsy people have disadvantage in the performance of their executive function compared to their typically developing peers, so it is very important that we build into their development programs. it would be useful to do researches in the future to examine the effectiveness of development programs. I finished the manuscript and I submitted in the review of educational research. We look forward the reply. The second project would be to analyze and publish the results of research. You can see the title of the second project. It's a descriptive cross-sectional study about the executive functions in two groups, children with cerebral palsy and typically developing children. We have the necessary approvals. On the CP group, the inclusion criteria was the diagnosis of cerebral palsy with ICD code. Exclusion criteria was if the child had been any psychological disorder or epilepsy. The control group matched to the CP sample by age and gender. They were typically developing children. By exclusion criteria was the similar in the cerebral palsy group. We used this test, you can see above. We couldn't take every test with everyone. And the highlighted numbers show the final number of participants. For example, we didn't take the Stroop test with children who couldn't read well. So we had 54 participants. There were children who started taking the test but dropped out because we found some problem during the process. There is no significant difference in terms of age and sex when comparing the two groups. We have preliminary results. I'm showing the Stroop test results, which measures inhibitory function. There is a large difference between children with CP and typically developing children, which is consistent with our meta-analysis result. In another test, we measured a larger difference compared to the meta-analysis result. The tool test, which is a measure of flexibility, it shows an effect size of 0.86, which is a large difference. I started writing the manuscript, which I will continue in July, after we have all the results, and we need a discussion with the statisticians, and the planned submission date is August. What are the strengths and the limitations of this research? The sample size is larger, about twice as much than previous researches, even if we couldn't take every test with everyone. And this study contains 7 tests, and also most articles use the 3-4 test. Furthermore, this is the first study that comprehensively examines the cerebral palsy population. It's a non-multicenter study because a special requirement was needed to measure performance. You can see the planned submission dates, so May and August. And I would like to close my presentation with this quote below, because it is completely in line with conductive education, my vocation, and every child means every child, including kids with cerebral palsy. Thank you for your kind attention. You're welcome to ask any question or comments.
Congratulations. Just the second study, what is actually new about it? We know that the CP kids have got, even in all these 7 tests, they know they're going to do badly.
Because if I can show it, yes. So we used 7 tests. If you look at the table, we used 2 for the inhibition function and 4 for the working memory and the flexibility. And we used the Raven test, which is a IQ measure test. and we would like to use and we would like to see the IQ is correlation with the executive function or not. But we need to do the analysis.
Nice presentation, congratulations. My question is, why did you rule out epilepsy from the CP patients? Because it's a selection bias from now.
Because some tests, for example, the inhib, when the child see the screen, they see really quickly pictures, and maybe it's cause epilepsy. Yes.
So you ruled out because it can cause seizures, and this was the reason.
Yes, yes. But we use other tests for CP's children who has epilepsy. Not this test, but the other test. Sorry.
So in your meta-analysis, you use the standardized mean difference for the effect size. What does it mean? What does it standardized?
Because these tests move on different scales, we have to do a standardization for we can see the difference between the two groups.
But for what, how you standardize, or what does it mean, for example, the 0.5 or the 1? Could you tell it?
No, we use just the means. We excluded the medians because we can't combine these two value, and we, as the author, send it the mean values, but yes. After we maybe take a dissection.
Thank you for your presentation. My question is regarding to your second topic. It's always hard to find a control group. How did you select them and where did you find them? What was the practice for it?
Yes, thank you for the question. We choose a primary and grammar school that average on basics of competence measurements. The schools were very helpful, but there are some infrastructural problems. For example, wasn't there free rooms, but we were lucky, and in the third school, it could have been solved. And after we matched the typically developing children to match the CPs for the CPs people by age and gender, and exclusion also if the child had any psychological disorder.
Congratulations to your presentation. My question is regarding to your second study, and for this table, you earned a quite high population number with CP patients. That's very good. And I was wondering, using the gross motor function classification scale, and it goes from 1 to 5, were you able to do all of the tests or involve patients from all of the levels, or did you limit it from, for example, for the first 3 or 4 groups?
Thank you for the question. Yes, when we started the research, I thought that it is important we take the test with cerebral palsy children with severe mobility problems as well. So, for example, when the time was not important, just for example, the number of the correct answers, the research assistants use the tools after the child said what to do. So yes, we take tests and all gross classification system levels.
I have a question as well regarding your first project. I just wondered, do you have any subgroup analysis, for example, on epilepsy or something like that?
Yes, we did some subgroup analysis, for example, age, gender, and one most important things was that if the articles reported the matching and the differences is significantly smaller was than in the articles it's not reported the matching. And it's important for the future researchers.
Thank you for your presentation. I have also one question. As your colleague, I'm just interested in that, are there any intervention or therapy or developmental program which target this to develop the executive function of the CP patients?
Yes, thank you. The question. When I read the articles, the literature, I found some methods to improve the executive functions. For example, mindfulness, computer programs, fighting sports, yoga. But we have to find the best way for the CP patients because, for example, I think the yoga is not the best because they have some mobility impairments. I think we should try the mindfulness and the computer programs.
Thank you. Just a short comment regarding your question. Maybe aquatherapies and aqua relaxations can be useful for these children. Just a comment.
Okay, thank you.